Welcome to this week's edition of Confessions of a Fitness Professional. I'm your Fit Pro, Andra Anderson, and let's dive into burnout. I think I've mentioned it probably several times throughout this podcast and all these videos because fitness instructor burnout is real. I mean, burnout in general is real, and I think honestly, since we went through the global pandemic, more and more people are aware of burnout and aware of their own limitations. But I think I'm noticing just from conversations with other fitness professionals, conversations at my education job, and conversations with some clients that we're starting to see those pre-pandemic overwork symptoms come back. And I think it is not a coincidence that this is also aligned with the big call for a lot of individuals who are doing remote work to come back to home base, to come back into an office environment when they've gotten so used to working from home. So I think there are just a few different things aligning to make burnout coming back to the top of that conversation list and in the forefront of everybody's minds. So let's dive into burnout. And again, this is a fitness professional podcast, but these things are, I think, across different industries. So I might get specific within fitness, but if you're not working in fitness and have no intention to work in fitness, I think that you'll still get something from this conversation. I want to start with identifying burnout. And I'm going to say something kind of shocking. When you start to notice the physical implications of being burned out, it's like stage 5 burnout. Like you've already surpassed the first 4 stages of burnout by the time you get to feeling the physical changes in your body. So things like classic burnout would be insomnia, like you just can't sleep. There's always a to-do list going, racking your brain in your head. You have a hard time falling asleep, or if you fall asleep, you have a hard time going back to bed, like you get up in the middle of the night. So insomnia is a really big one. Things like dehydration, fatigue, just wanting to rest all the time. Those are all classic burnout symptoms. And by the time you see those things and you recognize that those things are happening to you, you're already really far into burnout. So I want to back it up. There are many stages of burnout, but we're going to boil it down to 5. And I'm getting this list actually from Forbes. I think it's somewhere, maybe a 2021 edition, news from Forbes. But anyway, you'll be surprised to know that burnout maybe not. It makes sense when you hear it, but I was kind of shocked to hear that this was kind of considered the first stage of burnout. The first stage of burnout is excessive ambition. That seems like counterintuitive, right? Like if you're ambitious and you're probably motivated, that is sort of like a 180 from burnout, right? Like burnout means that you don't have the same level of interest, you're tired, you're noticing physical signs in your body, you can't sleep, or if you can get to sleep, you're waking up in the middle of the night. The things that you love just don't interest you anymore, and the littlest things irritate you, whether it's a person that you work with or a client. My gosh, a client, that's like the worst part of burnout, when you start getting mean to clients, then we need to talk. Sometimes burnout is an indication that you're doing too much, but sometimes it's an indication that you're doing the wrong thing. And we'll talk about that. But let's go back to that excessive ambition. So you might think that's a good thing, right? So just as an example, as a fitness instructor, yeah, I'll sub that class, I'll take that class, I'll teach that class. You want a 5 a.m. and a 5 p.m.? Got you. You want 2 Saturday morning classes back to back? That's it, I'm doing it. I think at some point, I would venture to say that majority of people exhibit excess and excessive ambition at some point in their professional careers, because you identify that you're like climbing the corporate ladder. You want to be seen. You want to be known as the go-to person. You want to be a rock star. You want to feel important, all of those things. So that is like the first step of burnout. You cannot necessarily have burnout until you've had excessive ambition, above and beyond going. So I just remember from like fourth grade report cards, there's this, there are those little numbers that your teachers could say like, oh, pleasure to have in class, number 11 or whatever it is. I just remember one of them was like, does the minimum required to pass? And somebody that experiences burnout does more than the minimum required to pass. So if you're level at that minimum required to pass, not going above and beyond, not doing too little, honestly, you're probably in a pretty sweet spot in your profession. Will you get recognized and noticed? Probably not. But if that stuff isn't important to you, then whatever. But those who experience burnout are usually pretty freaking ambitious, maybe a little competitive, definitely want to have some recognition in their industry. And I see this like all the time in fitness. I actually just ran into a fitness instructor friend at an event this past weekend, and we were both just talking about how, yeah, I'm teaching this class, and then I think about it and I'm like, am I gonna teach this class until the end of time? What do I do? How do I do this? And I feel like I talk about that all the time. All right, so you start off, that's your first like level of burnout, is excessive ambition. Like, put me in, coach. I'm ready. I can play every position. We don't need 9 players. I got them all. Excessive ambition. That second step or stage is working harder. I didn't say smarter. Working harder. Like, literally doing the most. Doing the most. And is that a bad thing? No. Not when it's done intentionally, not when it's done in a limited way. It's not necessarily a bad thing to work hard. It's not a bad thing to work hard, but to work hard all the time, where you have these conversations with yourself of, well, after this event next week, everything is going to be better. And then it just never gets better. That is a sign that you are leading the charge into burnout. So we started with that excessive ambition. Put me in, coach. I'm ready. We're working harder, like always have something on the calendar, always planning something. We never have a chill moment. And then we start to get into the deterioration of your life. Stage 3, neglecting your needs. I see this happen so much with trainers, because the not great thing about personal training is that for the most part, you have to be on the floor with your client, right? Like, there's virtual training where you give them something to do. And of course you could give them homework, but in order to have a really successful relationship with your client, you got to show up and be there. And also, unfortunately, a lot of big gyms, and the way I'm seeing the boutique fitness culture happening now, personal trainers don't make a ton of money, right? So each client that you have might be paying $80, $100, but you might not be seeing that money. So the urge then is to stack clients. Like, okay, well, I'll do 10 in a day. And it's not hard because I'm not actually training, I'm just training them. So you're like saying, I don't have the physical wear and tear in my body because I'm just communicating with clients. Well, communicating with clients and having clients is wear and tear on your mental capacity, your emotional capacity. Like, you are their person. And when you develop a relationship one-on-one with a client like that, you take on more than just being like a trainer that says, okay, 5 of these, 10 of these. You're talking about their life. They might be confiding in you. Like, there's a lot of mental and emotional stuff happening there. And what you see happening at this stage of burnout is you're like, well, okay, I could sleep 6 hours this night and get 12 clients the next day. I could skip my lunch break to help somebody. I could teach back-to-back classes because I'm already there, so why not? I could say yes to that event, all of those different things. So you start to neglect your own needs. All right, we are just rolling down this burnout train. The next one is a little more difficult, and it's something that I think you don't recognize in yourself, and if somebody tries to show you, you probably get like short with them, or maybe you even try to say that's not happening, and it's displacing your problems. So the idea, like, you're booking so many clients, you're not sleeping, so you're neglecting your needs, and then it's like, I'll lean on somebody else to do X, Y, and Z for me, or I'm just gonna push that off to the side and pretend that that's not happening right now because I need to focus. I'm hyper focused on this one particular thing, and that can lead to a lot of spirals that can really be harmful to your relationships. It can be harmful to your health. It can be harmful to your well-being overall. And then I think, where do you go from there? I think you work through denial. You work through excessive focus. Those are probably the next stages. And then if it gets really bad, you might go through withdrawal. And that's where you get to those physical signs of something is not right. And even if it is the right job for you and you are so happy working in fitness or doing XYZ, whatever job it is, you're not safe from burnout necessarily. I see it happen to the best, the absolute best of the best of the best. And what do? How do you work yourself out of it? I mean, I think the first step is recognition, right? Once you can recognize, oh, I am experiencing burnout, or I am dangerously close to burning out. And that is a huge step, because I think you get so hyper-focused, you get so withdrawn from reality that you forget that you're like a human being that needs to be fed and watered, basically a plant. And that makes it way more difficult. You're like so deep. And I see that happen with fitness too. Like you get, especially, and this is one of the reasons I have not opened my own fitness place, because I don't want to be tied to something that could potentially fail big. And there's a lot of overhead when it comes to fitness, and it's scary. And you tie so much of your happiness and well-being into the success of that one thing. It can be great when it's great, but if the economy is like, well, fitness is for fun and it's not essential, which is crap, of course, we know that. They're the problem. They out there don't know that yet. Obesity is still a huge problem, right? So if you are going through those things, you're not necessarily recognizing that you're burned out. You're just sort of displacing things. You're withdrawing. You're so hyper-focused, and stress starts to just eat you away. You become short with people. You might lose or damage relationships with really close friends or relatives, or I almost said even worse, your clients. I mean, all those relationships are important, right? But you could really do damage to your professional career, and that's not the end. Your professional career isn't who you are. Like, it doesn't define who you are. It's just a part of who you are. But a lot of times we wrap our happiness in what we do. So you'll start to experience those negative side effects. So how do you dig yourself out, right? What do you do? The first step is that recognition, right? I recognize that this is not healthy. I recognize that I need help. I recognize that I need to make a change. Boom. That is like 80% of the way to helping yourself work through burnout. What else can you do? How else do you avoid it? I'll tell you what I do. I diversify my portfolio. So when I was so hyper-focused on becoming the best Zumba instructor in my town, I was teaching longer than everybody else. I took more jobs than everybody else. I subbed more than everybody else. I was the it instructor. And I loved it for a second, and it was fun until it wasn't. And I was like, I need something other than Zumba. I need it. So I diversified my offerings. I sought new exciting adventures. I sought new trainings. I was like, what else is there? What else is there? And just repositioning and learning new things made it so much better for me. And I enjoyed Zumba. I enjoyed teaching Zumba even more because of that. Other things, focus on one thing at a time. Like, that kind of goes against a lot of times with burnout. You get so hyper focused on something that it becomes detrimental, and it's like all you can think about. But to make a real change, focus on one thing. So I became so good at Zumba and such a good Zumba instructor because it was the only class I was teaching at the time. I spent all of my extra time focused on teaching that class. Now, eventually that did lead to burnout because I just went a little too far. Instead of teaching like 2 or 3 classes a week to keep it fun, I taught 8 because why not? I had the capacity to do it. Why shouldn't I do it, right? There's the problem. Just because you have the capacity to do it doesn't mean that you have to do it. Less is more. Less is more. And I'm saying that out loud because I'm saying it to myself as well, because I am currently teaching 4 classes at a location. I promised myself I would only do 2. I'm currently doing 4, and I'm like, but it's just for a couple of months. I'm doing that to myself. So I'm working myself out of burnout. See, when we have these conversations, most of the time they're for you, but a lot of the time they're for me as well. So, all right, diversify. You can focus on one thing. So if you want to make a change, like I tell my fitness clients, all right, you want to make a body composition change? Let's focus on one thing at a time. How's your sleep? Or let's focus on one thing at a time. Think about your water intake, or eat more veggies. One thing at a time, and once we're good at that, then we can move on to something else. Sometimes when we witness that burnout is happening, it's like chicken with your head cut off and you're just running in a bunch of different directions trying to make up for the deficit that you've created, and then you're not doing anything because you're trying to put a little bit of your energy in lots of different pockets, and that just does not equal good times. So to get yourself out of that burnout, focus on one thing you can change, one thing. Maybe it's, hey, I'm not teaching on Sunday. Boom. No clients on Sundays. That's one thing, one day. And see how you feel having that one day. Maybe it's not enough and you need 2 days. Maybe it's just right. So focus on one change that you can make, one thing that you can do differently. One other thing I love when it comes to working out of burnout, and I say this like it happens all the time, I guess it can. If you have faced burnout before, you have a higher chance, I guess, of facing it again because of the type of individual that you are. I like to do just a complete brain dump. I get out the whiteboard, I do color-coded because color-coded makes me happy, and I make columns. Things that I have to do in order to live the life that I'm living, to pay my rent, to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills. The things that I have to do, I put in one column. The things that make me happy that I don't necessarily have to do, but I love doing, go in another column. The things that I would like to get rid of, but secretly could not say it out loud yet, that's another column. So you sort of look at how you're spending your time and categorize it into different columns, and maybe start to see a narrative or a story emerge from that of, okay, I could spend less of my time doing this, or maybe I'm only doing Instagram Reels because the algorithm says I need to, but really it takes me forever and I don't like it. Cut it. Maybe you're holding on to a class that you've been teaching because you've been teaching it since the beginning of time and you're not really sure why you're even teaching it anymore. Cut it. Cut it. Will you hurt feelings? Yeah, probably, but like you're hurting yourself more. Right? So don't be afraid to prioritize yourself in that game because it's really about you. Like no one's going to look out for you like you'll look out for yourself. So, man, we went deep today. Those are my tips. I don't want to like go on and on about this, but this really feels like the beginning of a conversation, and burnout is so real and it feels so hard to get out of. Once you've dug yourself into something, it feels really hard to back away from it. And yep, it can be hard, and yep, you probably might burn a relationship or two, but sometimes it's for the best. Just know that you are not alone, And there are others, I am others, that can talk to you and talk you through it. And if you're experiencing those things, sometimes talking to somebody with that perspective can help. Sometimes talking to somebody outside of your profession can help, just to get another opinion or a different idea of what to expect or how to make it better. So let's help each other through this, because nobody should go through burnout. I think it's something that might feel like a badge of honor, but thank goodness, like, this next generation, Gen Z and after, are totally challenging that idea of burnout. It's a very millennial thing. Burnout is a very millennial thing. Maybe Generation X too. For whatever reason, we love to work ourselves to death. So that's not right. We're gonna help each other through it, right? We're gonna help each other through it. But look at those signs and take a mental note, or actually a physical note. Get the pen and paper out and start to determine if maybe you're experiencing burnout, and if there's something that you might be able to do about it, which there is. And reach out if you need anything. Well, that's today's confession of a fitness professional, and take care of yourself. Be well.